Welcome to Facts Over Feelings. I'm your host, Reggie Wood. Because of the sensitive nature of the information that will be in this episode, I wanted to remain private until the parties involved have a chance to respond before it's published. I apologize for the production quality of this episode. In order to keep this classified, I did not want the production team to be involved. So I'm editing it myself. So they will sit this one out. At least I know something else that I'm not. I'm not a historian, I'm not a scholar, and I'm definitely not a producer. Folks, this is a juicy one. I will be addressing the slanderous accusations that Rahman Muhammad and Kelly Adams Wood. I still don't know what her real name is because it seems like she changed her name to Wood right before she came public about her daddy. They posted a YouTube video on March 14th that basically was to help Netflix and Ark Media protect the integrity of that episode. Well, it was not an episode. It was a documentary called Who Killed Malcolm X. It was a Netflix original, I guess, and they basically put out a history on Malcolm X and on what happened to Malcolm X and the assassination of Malcolm X. And it was this guy, Rahman, was supposed to be the authority on the assassination of Malcolm X, and he supposedly did all of this forensic investigation, and he talked to the FBI, he talked to this person, he went to the records room, and he went into the mosque, and he found out all this information. The problem is that they didn't look into Ray Wood, which was right there under their nose, right there in their face, and there were all roads kind of led there to the NYPD and the FBI being involved in the assassination of Malcolm X. So therefore, I basically, I put this out in a episode before called The Letter is Fake. I addressed it about Kelly after the exoneration. I did it in January because I didn't want to affect the DA's decision to exonerate the two men that were falsely accused in the assassination of Malcolm X, because that was Ray's dying wish. Ray's dying wish was to have those men exonerated, because for all of these years, he was carrying that burden of guilt that he knew these guys were innocent, but there was nothing he could do about it because he was acting in self-preservation. If he came out and tried to say something, then there could possibly be something done to him. He had legitimate fear of being killed. And when he told me, he confessed this stuff to me, that transferred to me. I mean, I went through it. I gained a bunch of weight. My wife and I separated. My daughter and I still aren't speaking behind this because they didn't know what was wrong with me, and I couldn't tell them because he swore me to secrecy. So all of this came about in November when Ray passed away. And I approached Ark Media to help me figure out what to do with the information. And you'll see that in this video that Ark Media portrayed themselves as someone that was trying to help me get it out to the world. But I found out later that they were just trying to suppress the information because it directly contradicts the credibility of their host. And the information that he put out there, he left a big piece of the puzzle out. And now they were finding that out when I came forward to them to try to get them to help me. And they tried everything in their power, including discrediting me and putting my life in danger. I mean, I've been threatened. I've been spat at. My life has been threatened. I no longer travel to Atlanta to iHeart Studios to produce my podcast because coming out one night, I was approached by people that in the name of Rahman Muhammad, I was spilling lies and selling lies on my podcast about Malcolm X and about what really happened to Malcolm X, and I needed to stop because I was affecting history and I was a threat to anyone that loves Malcolm X. So therefore, they spared me, but they told me that if they had to come back up there, then it would be a different conversation. And I don't know what that meant, but I wasn't trying to find out. So I am producing my podcast remotely, and we've kind of made the adjustment to do that. But you know, this is affecting my livelihood. On March 3rd, Ben Crump called me and he texted me and he said, "Hey Reggie, I've got an offer from AMC, American Movie Classics, to produce a movie about your book." That was short-lived because on the 14th, Kelly and Rahman came out and said all of these horrible things about me. And each one of them categorically are lies. Even the things that they said about the press conference. They went so far as to say that major media agencies, and I know who it is because Ashley at the New York Times, she contacted everybody in my family trying to find dirt on me, okay? And I found out the reason why she did that, and they say it in this video, because they reached out to them and told them that the information that I had was false. It was fake and it was fraudulent, and they should do something about it. And he even says in the video that he contacted all the news agencies and nobody would do anything, so he's doing it himself. And that's crazy. So if the news didn't want to come out and say anything, then, and they did their research, then it must mean something. Okay, they said because it was Ben Crump and they don't want to hurt his reputation, this, that, and the other. I know for a fact that if a news agency had some dirt on Ben Crump, they would be out there front and center with it, because they would be the ones that had the scoop on Ben Crump. Come on, man. All right. And then, you know what? I'm going to just go through the video and we're going to detail everything so that you understand, you know, because they even went so far is taking a video from Omar Shabazz, and you'll see also the video, if you haven't seen it yet, if you go to Omar Shabazz's site, his YouTube channel, you'll see the exclusive interview with Reginald Wood Jr. And it's an extensive, exclusive interview with me, and it kind of goes in depth about everything. But Rahman put in this video that Omar Shabazz is the best guy, blah, blah, blah. He does his homework, you know, shouts out to him, this, that, and the other, you know, 2 thumbs up. It got so far as in the Who Killed Malcolm X episode 6, Omar Shabazz is listed in the credits of the Netflix Who Killed Malcolm X episode as being the man to have his research in place and know his stuff. So then why is it that Omar Shabazz said that Rahman Mohammed owes me an apology? They even got into the letter. These people, and I'm not going to call any names because I don't want to put myself in the same position that they're in right now. They came with their analysis of the letter. First of all, they said the New York Times or Washington Post did DNA. I don't understand how you do DNA on something if you don't actually have possession of the item to do DNA on. And then Ashley from the New York Times emailed me back and said, "I just want to let you know that we never said that we did DNA. And we didn't do DNA. So how is it this research guy is supposed to be this big, this renowned guy and the authority on the investigation of the assassination of Malcolm X, and he doesn't know better than to lie about something that's obvious that you can't possibly do if you don't have possession of it." And you know, he was really frustrated that the press wouldn't do anything, wouldn't come out publicly. So he's the only one that came out publicly until April, when he got the Washington Post, Sydney over at the Washington Post, to print this article that basically said that, you know, Ray Wood confesses to his involvement in the assassination of Malcolm X, blah, 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 but historians don't believe it. And the historians that were in that article were all historians that appeared on the Who Killed Malcolm X series. So if that doesn't seem fishy, I don't even know. It's just crazy to me. And and the thing is, big ups to emails and just the fact that you need to dot your I's and cross your T's and keep everything. Because when I reached out to Ark Media, Phil and Rachel were so overzealous about trying to get me to sign over the rights and the life rights and turn over all the documents that I had pertaining to Ray's story, including the letter. And they wanted me to sign for them to own those rights. And if they own those rights, I would not control the narrative anymore. I would not have been able to do the press conference. I would not have been able to say anything. And they actively pursued me until they found out that I wasn't going for their whatever it was they called it. And then because they found that I wasn't able to do that, I wasn't going to do that. They tried to discredit me. Listen to this. I spoke to Phil because he asked me if I was going to sign the agreement on the 16th of February. And when I talked to him, I said, well, you know what? I'm not going to go with your deal. I'm not going to sign the rights over. But I am going to move forward with Ben Crump and 3 of Malcolm's daughters. We're going to do a press conference at the Audubon Ballroom on the 20th, the day before the anniversary of the assassination of Malcolm X. We're going to release this information in a press conference. Well, this dude called Malcolm's family to their representative and told them that the information was not credible, okay? Told them it was not credible and they should not go forward with the press conference. But see, what they don't understand about Ben Crump is Ben Crump because he does his homework. Before Ben Crump decided to do anything with me, Ben Crump made sure that I was able to provide all of the cooperating evidence and convince him and the sisters that this information was legitimate. And the person who did the handwriting authenticity and the handwriting specialist, they came back at above 90% on the handwriting. Because he said that you couldn't get 100% unless he actually witnessed it being signed. But I know in the real world, at 90%, you're the father. So for them, and Ark Media knew that because they paid for the handwriting analysis. And they tried to prevent him from giving it to me because they paid him. So it's just this web of lies and deceit and attempts to discredit me. So we went forward with the press conference, right? And when we went forward with the press conference, after I was done with all the interviews and everything, Phil and Rachel, the producers of Ark Media, the Netflix original, were there at the Audubon, although they were not invited. I told them they couldn't come. They reached out to Ilyas's family because they had done this documentary, so they had somewhat of a relationship, and invited themselves to the press conference. So at the end of the press conference, they approached me, they apologized, this, that, and the other. And then they said, look, we have a better offer for you. Let's do lunch tomorrow. So, I mean, I'm in New York City, food's expensive. I was like, all right, cool, let's go. So the next day we sit down, and during the meal, they make another offer. And I tell them, okay, well, just talk to my lawyer, send it to my lawyer, let's discuss it, blah, blah, blah. So they do that. And the 26th, the morning of the 26th at 11:30 a.m., they send me an email with the contract. And I didn't get it, I didn't look at it right away, but that's the timestamp on the email. And I have all of these documents that I'm going to provide in this video. So you'll see everything, okay? So on the 26th at 11:30, they send me the contract from their lawyer, some fancy pants lawyer, New York lawyer. They send it to me. And when I get it finally at about 1 o'clock, 1:30, I look at it and I forwarded it to Ben Crump. And in the email, you'll see this email, it says, these are the people that said the letter was fake. This is at 1:30. Got to remember the time and the date. 1:30 on February 26th. Okay? And then at about the same time, just after, well, actually, Phil called me and then I sent the email. But Phil called me. He said, hey, what do you think you're going to do? Blah, blah, blah. I said, well, I don't think I'm going to sign the contract right now because since the press conference, a lot of options have come on the table and a lot of things have opened up. So I'm not sure if I'm going to go with your agreement. I want to hear everybody out and find out what the best deal and the best situation is for not only for my book publishing, but for a podcast, for a podcast, obviously, and also a movie deal, a scripted movie deal, and a documentary that actually tells what really happened. Well, at 4:30, that same day after I talked to Phil and I received the contract and I sent that email to Ben Crump saying these are the same people that said that the letter was fake, Kelly Adams Wood comes on New York One, okay? Appears on New York One and says that the letter is fake. My daddy is not a coward and Reggie Wood is a liar, this, that, and the other. I mean, a full out attack on my credibility and on me. So she does that. Ben Crump tells me that, you know, anybody, any credible business or institution, because I was trying to work with United Talent Agency, they were no longer interested. They gave him the blow off. He said any credible company is not gonna work with me. So now I'm feeling kind of like, wow, this is crazy because everything she said is a lie. And then around the early part of March, I have to look up the times. I get an email from Ark Media, from Phil, and that's in there. It's in the video. I put all of that in because I took every piece of the video and I broke it into clips. After they make a statement, then I provide documents to contradict everything it is that they said, to answer and prove that everything that they said was a lie. So in early March on the 3rd, Ben Crump reaches out to me. That's my birthday, by the way, March 3rd, and says, hey, I got this movie offer from AMC. Okay? That was short-lived because on the 14th of March, Kelly and Abdur Rahman comes out with this video. Completely, I mean, it's full of lies, but their intention was to discredit me so that their video, their documentary stays credible, okay? Their narrative of everything stays credible. And, you know, one of the things that really kind of gets me is at the end of this video, Abdur Rahman says, and I'm paraphrasing because the exact words that he says really pisses me off. But he said that I was an enemy to the people who loved Malcolm X. I was to the history of Malcolm X and to the family of Malcolm X, and that he was going to deal with me. That sounds real familiar. It sounds as familiar as when the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and I'm not a Muslim and I'm not part of the Nation of Islam, but when wrong is wrong is wrong. When the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the minister Louis Farrakhan were at odds with Malcolm, they made statements. They said, you know, Malcolm was a traitor and he should be dealt with and things like that. And they made those statements, and the result of those statements, people who followed them or supposedly followed them took actions on their own, and they participated in the assassination of Malcolm X with the FBI and the NYPD. So historians directly blame the Nation of Islam and their leaders because of the words that came out of their mouth, okay? Because of the things that they said, not the things that they took part in. And they automatically blame them, and they have been ridiculed, for lack of better terms, for 60 years over this stuff. Okay? But Rahman found it okay to do the exact same thing that they did. So he's a hypocrite. He basically said, I needed to be dealt with. He said I was an enemy to Malcolm X's family, to the history, and to black people. So if somebody did something to me, which they have attempted to, if something happened to myself or my family, would he take responsibility for his words and the rhetoric that he put out? I think not. So let's get into this video and you can see exactly what I'm talking about.
All right. How's everybody doing this evening? This is your good brother, Abdur Rahman Muhammad, from the Netflix docuseries, Who Killed Malcolm X? And I'm here tonight with Miss Kelly Wood, who is the daughter of Officer, or I should say Detective Sergeant, really, yeah. Sergeant Raymond Wood. And you're going to see later on why I corrected myself and did not use the word officer. Okay, why I self-corrected myself. We're going to get into that, Kelly. Tonight's topic, exposing the Ray Wood deathbed confession letter hoax.
Wow, so he starts off representing Netflix. I mean, before he even starts the slander, he says, I am Abdur Rahman Muhammad from the Netflix special, Who Killed Malcolm X? Wow, welcome to the party, Netflix. I was actually able to save the original YouTube video that was done on March 14th before they were able to take it down.
Okay, exposing the Ray Wood deathbed confession hoax. And that's what it is, folks. It's a hoax, okay? The unfortunate part about these types of hoaxes is that it's almost impossible to pull it back completely from the public imagination. There will always be people who will cling to these types of conspiracy theories and, you know, unfounded schemes and cons for whatever reason, and we could talk about that. The unfortunate part about it is that, you know, for those who have seized upon this fraudulent letter, and that's what it is. It's a fraudulent letter attributed to Sergeant Raymond Wood. Unfortunately, you know, there will always be those who will create some type of urban myth or urban legend, and they will utilize it to serve their purposes. But I'm here to tell you tonight, categorically, unequivocally, incontrovertibly, the Ray Wood letter is a hoax, it is a fraud, it is a scam, and it is a con carried out by one Reggie Wood, who my guest will be able to tell you is something of a low-life character, a common run-of-the-mill con artist, and it's
bottom feeder.
What did you say?
I said bottom feeder.
Bottom feeder.
Mm-hmm.
It's really astonishing and indeed sad that he got the kind of publicity that he even got. Mm-hmm. Okay. And with that, I'm going to introduce Miss Wood. Miss Wood, what do you think about all of this that's happened within the last couple of weeks? A lot has happened.
You know, I first and foremost, I am grateful. And I want to thank you so much for giving me the opportunity. You are a prime example of how to get out there and, you know, shine the truth on a myth, because you took the time to find me, which nobody else did. I had to reach out in other cases, but you actually came and found me because you were looking to get to the bottom of this and you wanted to know what was going on. So my first emotion is disappointment. I'm just so disappointed because my father's career was magnificent. And up until he died, then all of a sudden he became this phenomenon, and words like coward and, snitch, and just very, very negative words were attached to his reputation, which is heartbreaking and disappointed. So that's where I am right now.
Well, here's the thing, Kelly. We're at a point where the media knows the reality of this matter. Okay. Mm-hmm. They have done their research. They've done analysis, handwriting analysis, mm-hmm. DNA analysis. Mm-hmm. They've spoke with you, and they've gone through the plethora of lies mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. that Raymond Wood has told. He can't even keep his lies straight.
Well, okay? Reggie Wood.
Pardon me. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Reggie Wood.
Got to check it.
Thank you for correcting me. Reggie Wood cannot keep his lies straight. That it was so easy, to get at the truth of this hoax. Unfortunately, for political reasons,
for sure,
they don't want to report on it.
Right.
I didn't want to do this report this evening because I thought for sure, knowing what I know about what the media has, right, and the conclusions that they've reached, mm-hmm. I was just waiting for them, to file their reports.
Okay, now let's examine this next statement. And I'm not laughing. I'm trying to be really serious here because it is a very serious matter. I mean, my life has been threatened, so don't mistake this for anything other than trying to keep from getting upset. But the first thing he did was he called it a hoax. He called me a fraud, a scam, a con artist, and then she inserted bottom feeder, and he concurred. And then she thanks Rahman for finding her to come on the show. So did he pay her? She said that the other media wouldn't do anything with her. She had to reach out to them. So she admits that she went to the media and tried to discredit me intentionally. In addition to that, he says that the media did DNA. Now, I know that they reached out to the New York Times because Ashley from the New York Times put a scope up my backside. She called my whole family, my nieces, nephews, my son-in-law, my everybody, to try to get dirt on me. But you know what? The New York Times never printed a story because once they did all of that, they found that it was credible. And also, Ashley from the New York Times, I sent her an email to ask her about it because I told her that there's a possible lawsuit that was coming. And she very quickly the next day came back, and I have the email right here. She said, I just want to let you know that we never did DNA or told anybody that we did it, DNA, because she knows that I know that she's never had possession of the letter. I have maintained complete custody of this letter. When it went to get examined before, I was there. Nobody ever did DNA on this letter. And the district attorney doesn't want to validate this letter because if they validate this letter, then that opens up a whole can of worms and lawsuits back to back to back to back. Because if they validate the fact that the FBI and the NYPD participated in the assassination of Malcolm X, then it opens the floodgates for lawsuits for everybody that was falsely incarcerated, okay, behind the assassination of Malcolm X and many other issues. That just shows that they were involved in a lot of things. I mean, I don't even know what other words to give it. So, Rahman also admits that he spoke to the media. So, I mean, what is it that that I need to say to prove that they intentionally went out and tried to get people to discredit me? And they did not. And like I said, the only other agency that did was the Washington Post, and every historian that they interviewed were on the Who Killed Malcolm X episode or series.
Also, too, you know, this is an example of what I call black on black crime. I mean, this is two Black individuals from the community, unfortunately related, you know, having a dispute publicly when it should have never happened that way. You know, anytime something like this comes out, the protocol is that you go to the individuals within your family and you receive permission to move forward, especially if you're not the next of kin.
Okay, now specifically, you're talking about the fact that no one even came to you, his
Right.
daughter,
Right.
to verify whether Raymond Wood was even dead.
Exactly.
And present
you know,
a death certificate. They just took what Reggie said
right.
and ran with it.
He didn't have a birth certificate because he can't obtain one because he's not the next of kin relative, right? So technically, when that story broke, you know, if it wasn't for the fact that I came out a week later and confirmed with my father's death certificate that he was in fact dead, he could have been chilling in the Dominican Republic somewhere, right? And then popped up and just spoiled the whole thing. And they would all look crazy, right? But that's what I'm saying, is that's why this was a black on black crime, because nobody did their due diligence in verifying who this person was, you know, as far as my father, Raymond Wood, really was, who his family really was, and who Reggie Wood really was.
She's right. It is a black on black crime. Abdur Rahman Muhammad and Kelly Adams Wood are committing an assassination of my character in the name of Netflix. And, you know, she says that I never told her that I was going to do this. That's a lie. I sent her a text message that says, Kelly, do you have some time to jump on a call this week? Thanks. For what? My book. And then she says, not sure I can be much help. And I said, I don't need your help. I am just keeping you informed as I promised. The next thing, she said that I am the next, I didn't contact the next of kin. It's not necessary for me to contact the next of kin or get her permission because Raymond Wood made me the executor of his estate. My father, Reginald Sr., was the first name, and my name, Reginald Jr., is the second name on the executor of his estate on the power of attorney. So therefore, I did not have to get her permission to do anything. The next thing is, and this is a lot to unwrap, because this right here, it really bothers me, because how can you have this type of relationship with your father? He put in his will, okay, specifically, that he did not want, if he was incapacitated, he did not want Kelly to be his caregiver or have control of anything, because she would use it, okay, for her own needs, and she would manipulate him and use his stuff for her own considerations. You can read it for yourself. I'm just paraphrasing because I'm talking right now. It got so bad that in 2008, he took the grandkids, Kelly's children, out of his will and said that because of the hostile relationship that he has with their mother, he is rescinding or retracting or taking back the benefits that he left for them in his will. That's gangster. I don't know what kind of relationship she had with him, but it was enough to make him leave town and move to Tampa, Florida, to get away from her and her husband.
Well, you know, what gave me suspicion right off the bat is the fact that there was no video. In full disclosure, Reggie did reach out to some of my people, associated with my production team, and they wanted me to figure this out, because apparently he saw the series, and like you said, ideas came in his head,
Mhm.
and he's thinking, okay, maybe I can get in on the season 2,
Right.
you know.
Right.
But it smelled like a rat from the very beginning, because, you know, we know for a fact that United States Postal Service is going broke because no one mails letters anymore. It's all email.
Okay, where do I start with this one? First of all, he said there's no video. Well, Raymond did not do a video because he knew the amount of pressure that he was going to be putting on me after he gave me this confession. And he didn't truly trust me yet to hold that information and keep that video until after he passed away, because of the amount of pressure that was put on myself and my family by holding this secret for almost 9 years. So he knew. So when he didn't do a video, it was intentional. And you know, you got to remember, I'm not a scholar and I'm not a historian. And I say that in a lot of episodes on my podcast because people ask the stupidest questions. Okay, why didn't he do this? Why didn't he do that? I don't know. I just know that he told me that after he passed away, I would have everything that I needed to be able to come forward. And when he died and I found out, I didn't even know I was the executor of his estate. I found out that I was the executor of his estate, and my father gave me all of the documents that Ray was sending to my father. And my father, you know, he just, because he was my father was the matriarch of the family, so a lot of the older members of the family have him, you know, take care of their funerals and all that, because even though he's the matriarch, he was the younger one, but he was the most successful in the family to the extent that he was a sergeant major, and they would have him deal with all of their funeral arrangements and all that. So my dad, he just had an envelope for Ray, and every time he mailed something, he put it in the envelope. And you know, he said, no one mails letters anymore. You know, the post office is going bankrupt. I believe that statement is crazy because Ray was 80 years old. 80-year-olds mail things. 80-year-olds don't trust email yet because it wasn't part of their era. They mail things to make sure they get there and they're postmarked. So let's go into the fact that he said in full disclosure. Now, he just officially invited Ark Media and Netflix to this party, okay? He said that his production team wanted him to get to the bottom of this. His production team is Ark Media and Netflix. So they wanted him to get to the bottom of it because it smelled fishy. Well, the fishy smell was from them, because in the documents that you see in this video, you see that I reached out to them in October before Ray died, because I was trying to figure out how to get someone to convince him to go on tape, to convince him to go to record or go on tape or video or whatever it was, so that this stuff could be out there. I reached out to Gareth Elber. I reached out to Josh. Gareth Elber reached out to Josh Davis. Josh Davis reached out to me because apparently the information must have been juicy enough for Gareth Elber to pass it on to another one of his associates. And then there's a crime writer. His name is Jake Harpin, and he's a Pulitzer Prize winning writer. And I reached out to him, and Jake Harpin is also an English professor at Yale. He wrote a whole letter directed to Ray, which you'll see later on in the video, because they accuse me of stealing people's stuff and all this other stuff. But he wrote a whole letter asking Ray to let him document it so that it could be part of the record. This was before Ray died. If you notice the dates on this stuff, this is October, after Ray contacted me and told me that don't forget what it was that you promised to do. Now, I mean, all of these emails are directed right in that time frame after he asked me. So not before, not any of that. So it basically proves that Ray knew that his demise was coming soon. I don't know if it had something to do with outside sources or he knew he was just aging and his health was going down. But he in October, well, no, not even October. It was earlier than that. It was like late August, and then I didn't. I mean, I thought about it, but I was trying to figure out what to do because I didn't have anything. I didn't know about a letter. I didn't know about a power of attorney. I just knew that he gave me this whole story. I got all of these notes, and how are people going to believe me? So I reached out to Ark Media, and they went, wow, they went out of their way to try to discredit me and bury this. When they found out that I wasn't going to sign over the rights, they called Malcolm X's family's representatives, okay, the daughter's representative. They called them and told them that my information was not credible. But if it was so uncredible, then why did they continue to pursue and try to get me to sign a contract? Even after Kelly came out, which I believe, I'm not accusing anyone of anything because I don't have proof of that, but it just seems funny that the same day that I told him that I was going to do my own documentary and my own scripted film, the same day, hours later, she shows up on New York One. And, you know, I kind of think that because Kelly was aware of when Ray passed away, and I came down there, I told Kelly about the confession. I told her that I was putting everything into a book, that I was working on it. It was a work in progress. I even invited her to participate in the book to help me out because he was his daughter, even though when he changed his will in 2019, because she had control of him and she forced him to go in there to change his will. Well, in the private room with the attorney, when she wasn't there, he changed the will. He added his grandkids back in as the beneficiaries, and he still left her out. Okay? So this is what I believe. I'm not saying that that's what happened, but the pieces fit. When I went down in November after Ray passed away and talked to Kelly and explained to her what was going on, she was in complete denial because she felt like she could make some money off of Ray being this Statue of Liberty bombing hero and this hero cop. She had this whole plan, okay? Because when I went down there, the first thing she asked was, did he have an insurance policy? I said, no, he had cancer. They wouldn't give him an insurance policy. She got really upset. She said, my daddy said he was going to take care of me. And I'm thinking, well, chick, you only been in his life for like a year and a half. He going to take care of you for the rest of your life? And he been in hiding away from you for 9 years, 8, 9 years, 10 years, or whatever it was. So now you think he's going to take care of you with an insurance policy? Well, guess what? He doesn't have one. And he didn't have mortgage insurance on the $480,000 house that you had this 86-year-old man buy. So I believe that she reached out to them and started talking to them about, you know, something, and they felt like she could be their ace in the hole if I didn't sign the documents. So look at those documents and make the judgment for yourself. Judge for yourself what happened, because they called the Malcolm X's family, but at the same time, they invited me to brunch the day after the press conference and made me another offer for a contract. And when they sent the contract, I sent an email to Ben Crump because Kelly had come out with this crazy, well, they had contacted them, and then Kelly hadn't come out yet. But I sent the thing to Ben Crump, and then hours later, they come out with Kelly. So make the decision for yourself. You can see everything. The documents are all there, and it's all in line with the dates and everything. It's all there. Pause it, look, examine it, you know, fast forward it, run it back, do what you need to do. It's up to you.
Let's get into this hoax, because we have to address the issue of credibility. Okay, your credibility versus Reggie Wood's credibility. Okay, I've made my final conclusion about this. As I said, it is a hoax. It is a fraud.
Mhm.
However, you know, right after you gave your statement to the media
Mhm.
last week, New York 1,
Mhm.
Reggie Wood appeared on a Nation of Islam platform,
Mhm.
okay, in which he went in on your character. I like to play a clip of Reggie,
Mhm.
and I'd like you to respond to, you know, what he is saying in this clip, okay?
Certainly. Mhm.
If you don't mind. Let's go here. Let's hide the floating controls and okay, here we go. Pay close attention, guys, okay?
And to work to lead them into activities that would be used to discredit them and their movement. Under the direction of my handlers, I was told to encourage leaders and members of the civil rights groups to commit felonious acts. In this deathbed letter, Mr. Raymond Wood talked about how he was used in the plot that resulted in the death of Malcolm X. This letter details the FBI, and the NYPD's involvement in the assassination of Malcolm X. Joining us to discuss this revelation and the impact of this letter is our brother Reggie Wood, relative of Raymond Wood, and brother Demetrius Muhammad, the author of the book, Did Y'all Kill Malcolm X? Thank you, brothers, for joining us today. How are you? Great. Thank you for having us. So, brother Reggie, my first question will be to you. You know, I recently came across a clip where the daughter of Raymond Wood, named Kelly Wood, is questioning the legitimacy of the letter. So what's your response to this accusation? Well, I understand that she wants to protect the legacy of her father. However, Kelly did not interact with her father for 10 years. She came back into his life a year before he passed away. And now she is armchair quarterbacking on what it is that he wanted to do. He trusted me. I took care of him. I brought him from Charlotte, North Carolina, where she lived, and they were in a feud, and brought him down to Tampa to live with me for 10 years. And it's odd that she said that I was a distant cousin when we're on the same Costco card, and I'm the emergency contact on his apartment complex that I put him in when he moved down. Thank you for that response. And I will go to my...
Okay, no follow-up, no
Listen.
challenge. Okay,
listen,
all right, no, I'm going to give you, okay, Kelly, I just want to know now, okay, how do you respond to that? He said that you wasn't in your father's life for 10 years. You just showed up, you know, Johnny come lately after he did all the work, taking care of your father, and his name is on the Costco card.
Listen, when did a Costco card become that important to prove a relationship? When did we ever rely on a Costco card to show any type of validity of how trustworthy a person was? I mean, that's just complete insanity. No mention of, I have photographs from the past 4 years. What about the names of the doctors that you took him to, man? You know, my father had a slew of doctors that he had to be taken to on a daily basis, okay? You know, an armchair quarterback, I love it, because the truth of the matter is that the last time that my father actually spoke to Reggie was, here it is, 2012. Let me say that again, 2012 was the last time that he interacted with Reggie Wood.
Now, let me ask you something. Did your father stay with Reggie Wood for 10 years?
No, that's what I'm trying to tell you. He went down there in March of 2011. Reggie did drive him. And so that is actually true. Reggie did drive him from Charlotte to Tampa, Florida in March of 2011. And that is very relevant. Very relevant. And it goes back to that letter, okay? Because again, they sat in the car for 10 hours in March of 2011. Remember that, y'all, okay? Then when they got down to Florida, they started to get into a business together by June of 2011. But by December of 2000, I'm going to even say January of 2012, and at the absolute latest, December of 2012, they were not even speaking. They were not even speaking.
And again, hoax and fraud and more name calling, more slanderous name calling in an attempt to defame me. But let's just unpack this. She said that when has a Costco card determined anyone's relationship? Now, I don't know about you guys, but the Costco card means that you have permission to write checks on that account. And the person who is the card holder, the primary card holder, is responsible for that check as the person who wrote it. So a relationship, I wouldn't just put my people on a Costco, anybody that I know on a Costco card, just friends and random relatives that I barely know. So that's what it is about the Costco card. Then she said that the last time that I saw Ray, and she said it twice, was January of 2012. Okay? Then she said at the latest December, but January of 2012 for sure, pretty much. Okay. Well, you'll see emails between Ray and I put a whole list of them because there's multiple communications on there that lead up to, or just on that page alone that I posted, because I didn't want to bombard you guys with so much stuff. But it goes up to October of 2013. I believe, and I'm not a scholar, but I do believe that October of 2013 is later than January 2012. You also see emails in there where Ray and I are communicating. We talk about projects that he's working on with me because I made him the project manager for my artificial grass company. And he says in some of the emails, hey man, can you send me that file again? I don't know how many people that hate someone that say, hey man. So that part. Pictures, there's plenty of pictures there. I didn't want to bombard you, so I put 3 or 4 pictures. Okay. And then she said that I wasn't dealing with them. Again, the copies of the signatures, Ray's signatures on 4 leases. The leases ran from 2011 to 2015. I was his emergency contact on those leases. And that is the reason that I was able to get those copies, because they were given to me because I had to sign as his emergency contact because he was a senior citizen. Okay? So for somebody who's been dealing with this lease and dealing with Ray until 2000, through 2015, when Gareth Felber released that article that directly names Ray as being at the Audubon Ballroom, and Ray went back into seclusion, I just don't get it. I don't understand how she can say that I didn't deal with anything. And then let's address the doctors. She said he had a slew of doctors. So if he had a slew of doctors to care for all of his intricate needs, that means that those doctors have been dealing with him since 2011 up to when she removed him from the care of his slew of doctors and took him to Charleston, South Carolina. And everyone knows that Tampa, Florida, and Florida alone, has the best doctors for senior care in the country. So for her to say he had a slew of doctors, that means that she was completely aware that if she took him away from these slew of doctors, then that would affect his lifespan, okay? And it's less than, I don't know how many months, but he moved to, and you can look at the pictures that in the next few slides that they have on the Instagram, of her Instagram or Facebook or whatever it is, and it shows that when she took him from Tampa in January of 2020, they closed on the house in Charleston, South Carolina in May, and Ray was dead by November. So that means that when she took him away from that slew of doctors, he was dead within a year. Now, I'm not accusing anyone of anything, because that's not what I'm doing. I'm just stating the facts. This show is facts over feelings. So I'm stating the facts. I'm not going into any feelings about anything, because my feelings, it would be a totally different show. But this is facts over feelings.
And so that is because the business dealings that Reggie conned my father into joining cost my father $125,000. The man had to file bankruptcy because of his shenanigans and foolery.
So you're saying that Reggie even conned your father out of $120,000?
25,000, yes, he did.
125,000.
All of this is on public record of where my father actually sued Reggie, okay, because of this money dealings and this bad dealings. My father was not the only victim. You know, I have here a letter that my father wrote on May 16, 2012, and he said, however, in hindsight, Reggie, in my opinion, pulled a con job on me as an elderly relative. I was induced into his investment. I used my extensive credit portfolio to finance this company and lost everything in the process when the company went into insolvency. Reggie's plan was to combine his artificial grass operation with this so-called jungle jump bounce children houses to form an outdoor amusement center for children. Unfortunately, it did not work out. And so, you know, my father accepts the responsibility of not doing his due diligence and looking into the background of Reggie to find out what other incidents that this individual had before going into business with him. But I know, knowing my father, what he did was he just went on the fact that Reggie was the son of his cousin, who Ernie Wood, you know, up until that point, my father did trust. At one point, Ernie was the executor of his will, which again is very important because it goes back to that envelope. Okay.
Okay. Hold. Let's slow down a little bit. We need to get a little background because it seems that you and your father at some point, you know, had a family dispute that estranged you for some time, which opened the door for a Reggie Wood to come in and take advantage of your aging father. Now, he says he took care of your father for 10 years. How, you know, actually, what was the actual time that he had any dealings with Raymond Wood, your father?
And again, that's what I'm saying is that
I mean, give me how many, was it a year?
I'm going to say it was 10 months at the absolute most, because again, it was from March 2011. And then you've got this letter that's dated May the 16th, 2012.
So in that short period of time, your father was out of $125,000. That quick. His credit was ruined.
Right. Filed bankruptcy. Exactly.
And Reggie allegedly absconded with the money. Is that the case? Is that true?
Well, and you know, what he never did was he never repaid my father back for any of the investment into the business. And so, you know, when you have an investor, and everybody knows when you have an investor, if you as the founder of this investment are somehow responsible for the business failing.
Okay, so I'm going to address this. She said that I conned him out of $125,000. He filed bankruptcy, and it's on the public record. I did a con job to try to combine the Jump Jungle Amusements with my artificial grass company. And then he only got in because I'm the son of his cousin, and he trusted me. And then they said that that they had a family dispute, and that's why it allowed me to come in and abscond. I don't even know what that word means, but a thief, and I absconded. And she also said again that I was only with Ray for 10 months. That's an insult to me. But let's go into the first thing. She said that I conned Ray out of $125,000. Well, I posted the Hillsborough County Court, clerk of the court records. And I put in Raymond A. Wood, and there are 14 things that came up, okay? And I clicked all, so it shows everything, traffic tickets, this, that, and the other. And there are no indications of Raymond A. Wood, okay, born in 1933, or any Raymond A. Wood that has a lawsuit against Reginald Wood. There's nothing in there, okay? There's different Raymond A., different middle names, different Raymonds, this, that, and the other. But there are no lawsuits from Raymond A. Wood and Reginald Wood against Reginald Wood, first of all. And if he had filed bankruptcy, then many of his card holders and his creditors would have filed something against him as well as a part of the bankruptcy proceedings to protect themselves and their interests, okay? So there would be filings from different credit card companies and things like that. In addition to that, that pretty much addressed it. That it's there. I went in and I typed in his name. I pulled it up. It says 14 items, and it shows all 14. I even numbered them on the side so everybody could see. And you could go on the website yourself and find out for yourself. Raymond A. Wood, and type it in. There is nothing against Reginald Wood. Also, the next thing is I combined the business. I combined the business because Jump Jungle Amusements was unsuccessful because of, and you know what, I hate to go into this, but I have to answer everything. Because if this was a deposition, it probably will come to that at some point. You have to answer everything. And I hate to go this because this man is dead. But Jump Jungle Amusements was a children's amusement place. It was inflatable slides, the big ones that were like the different ones with the characters, Cars and Justice League and all of these other things. And it was a place where people brought their kids. Women brought their daughters and their sons and their kids, and they walked around the park and let them jump on all this stuff, and they go down the slides and all of that. Well, Ray, being the playboy that he's always been, even according to Susan Brown Miller, while he was undercover, he was that playboy. He would let the women into the park for free, and then he'd follow them around from attraction to attraction to attraction, basically hounding them, trying to help with the kids. He could barely stand up half the time, but he's trying to be helpful, and just trying to, I guess he was being that playboy. And they would complain to the other two women that were partners. It was Ray and I, my wife, and another partner who's a female. And the customers would complain to them and say, hey, this guy is kind of creepy. Why is he, why doesn't he stop following us? So the women told me to tell Ray to stay home. And I said, well, you know what? Proper procedure is we need to have a meeting. Okay, because I didn't want to just go to him and tell him to stay home. So we had a meeting, and he argued his point, and the women we voted, and I voted on behalf of the women. And Ray felt like I betrayed him because he's my cousin, we're both men, and I betrayed him by voting on their side. So what it was Ray was the treasurer and the secretary. And it shows that on the documents. So if you're the treasurer of the company and the secretary, how did I rip him off? He was in charge of the money. He was in charge of the bank accounts. He was in charge of the credit cards. He was in charge of the business side of the company. But when we voted for him to stay home because it wasn't necessary for him to be there to run the business side of the company, he took his ball and went home. He closed the credit card accounts. He closed the bank accounts. And we didn't know that until the power company turned the power off and all the inflatables hit the ground. And we were like, well, what's going on? The power bill should be paid. Then we found out that Ray had turned everything off. And you'll also notice the partnership agreement is in this documents that you can see. You'll notice that in the partnership agreement, we all have financial responsibilities. Mine was $500,000. My wife's was $150,000, which meant mine was $650,000 realistically, and our other partner was $40,000. She was a smaller partner, but we still gave everyone the same level. and then Ray was 250,000. So that means that if it was 250,000, he didn't even put in the whole amount that he was supposed to put in the first place. And then she said, I conned him into coming into the business. No, Ray came down to Florida. We used to have a brunch every Sunday at the house. It was just a thing that we did. Our friends and family would come over and we would have brunch on the water at our house. And Ray was there and he heard us discussing Jump Jungle, being about to open Jump Jungle. And he inserted himself into the business that was already about to take place. And so we told him what he needed to be able to get in, and he agreed. So at the end of the day, Ray took his ball and went home. And it's similar, and Kelly can't even argue that, because when I went down to see her, she told me why her and Ray fell out. Because Ray inserted himself into her business that was already existing. And you can look at the news article that says pole dance maven sues ex-partner. That's his father. She had a pole dance business. Ray inserted himself, convinced her to open another location. And after he convinced her to open that location, they opened that location, and Ray would not give the key to the instructors. He would go and open the business and sit in the office behind a two-way glass and watch the classes. And the instructors complained to Kelly about it being creepy. They did not want him in there watching the classes. The customers felt uncomfortable and the instructors felt uncomfortable. So Kelly, of all people, should already know what went down. But then she says that I combined the two businesses. I did. I was trying to mitigate the losses, because when Ray took his ball and went home, the business went under. And I was trying to mitigate the losses by combining the artificial grass business and the Jump Jungle to kind of roll some of that, just kind of figure it out. And I gave Ray a job working as the project manager for the artificial grass company. And there are photos, and there are of the work that the projects that he managed. There are emails showing the communications on him doing the projects and working on them. So this statement is so false and so defamatory. I think that's and so slanderous. It just hurts me, because I did everything I could to make that man feel at home and make him feel like a part of the family and keep him occupied and busy, because he was a senior and we needed to keep him doing something.
Into my home, taking pictures of my father's memorabilia, where I had told him specifically, do not use this for any type of public use. This is for the family only. Because remember, we never met these individuals. I've never met his side of the family, okay? So I said, sure, take the pictures, bring it back to the family. And what did he do? He exploited those pictures on his book. And I have it in writing where I specifically said, do not use this memorabilia for any public use. I also told him, do not write a book. I was never told that some kind of letter was actually written, because I would have demanded to see it. I would have demanded to see it right there on the spot, but I was never told. Imagine that. You going public with an item and the next of kin, his daughter, is not even told, not even brought in to say, this is what we have on as from your father. I found out when y'all found out. Imagine that.
That's horrible.
That is horrible. In fact, my son called me and said, Mommy, did you see this? Did you see what Reggie's doing? And I said,
when he said, that you weren't in your father's life for the last 10 years, without your knowledge, I went through your Facebook postings without your knowledge. Okay. I do my research so that you could put me together, because I have to know what the truth is. Okay. Exactly. And I see these pictures dating all the way back 2016. I have the second one, 2018, 2019, 2020.
And you know what's even interesting is that if you go to the posting where I displayed about my father's passing, and you look and you read the comments, people who are in the comments say, I love the relationship between you and your dad. They actually, I mean, they saw the documentation, they saw the relationship unfold, they saw where we were speaking, and then they saw where we weren't speaking. They saw our reunion, which is the one in 2016, where you could see he's in Tampa, Florida. But at the time that my father, when I took that picture with him, he was by himself. Reggie was not anywhere in his life.
And that's because he robbed him, right?
Exactly. He had robbed him 4 years prior to, back in 2012.
Okay, well, let's move it along, because I don't want to be burdensome on the people, but I just want the people to see, that this man is a straight up liar, and he has no problem doing that. And here is the evidence that what he said in that interview with those Nation of Islam guys is a complete falsehood. All right.
Okay, so this is the guy that the news and everyone else calls the authority on Malcolm X. That's laughable, because he's trying to discredit me, but he puts up this photo of her Facebook pictures, and could you hear her when he said that? She was like, "Oh." So, anyways, the 2016. Let's start at the beginning. Well, no, let's go back to taking pictures of the memorabilia. First of all, the image that's on my book is a collage that Ray made, and he gave a copy of that collage. He framed it and everything as a gift to my father. He also gave a copy of it to me, and who knows who else. And there was one on the wall at the house in Charleston when I went down to check on the estate. So, and I took a picture of a different collage because I thought it was interesting, because it had a lot to do with the civil rights movement. It showed the police abusing people, water hoses, this, that, and the other. And I took a picture of that because I was really trying to figure out what Ray's perspective was. Whether he was putting that up because it was something that he was sad about that bothered him, or it was something that he felt like was something that his comrades would. I didn't know. I wasn't trying to make any assumptions or anything. I just took a picture of it, and I asked her to show me how to scan it with the phone to make it clean, and she did. And then later she said, I asked her if she could show me how to find it, because she did it for me, and she told me what to do. And then she came back and said, "Oh no, I don't want you to take that picture or use it for anything," because I told her I was going to be writing a book, and I didn't use that picture, even though she didn't have a right to tell me not to, because I am the executor of his estate. She didn't have a right to tell me anything, but I didn't want to get into the whole emotional thing with her. But the image on my book is the image of the collage that Ray gave me as a gift. So that statement she made is false. Then let's go into this picture. And they say a picture is worth 1,000 words. Oh man, this picture's worth millions of words, okay? 2016, it shows the first image, 2016. In 2016, Ray was there alone. In 2016, it was 4th of July of 2016, she showed up. She got his address from the voter registration information. In Florida, if you register to vote, it's public information. So anyone can find your address. I don't know if I like that or not, but it is what it is. But she says that when she came and saw Ray in 2016, I was nowhere to be found. Well, I do know from Ray that she did come, okay, because he didn't know what her motives were. She stayed for the day or maybe the weekend, and he sent her away because he still wasn't feeling her. He still was not feeling her, and he was upset that she just showed up on him, because he was there in his apartment sitting out on his porch like he always does, and she rolls up, okay? So yes, he did take a picture with her, spent time with her. Ray, like I've said many times before, when in Rome you do as the Romans do. Ray acted like, when he took the picture, he smiled, this, that, and the other, but he sent her away. If you notice, the next picture isn't 2017, it's 2018, because Ray still wasn't having it. So she said, where was Reggie? Well, let me tell you where Reggie was. In 2015, in February 21st of 2015, Garrett Felber published an article that talks about Yuri Kochiyama, which Ray knew. And he also talks about the fact that she saw him at the Audubon being the second person arrested. And he put that in the paper and he printed it on the anniversary of Malcolm X's assassination in the Guardian newspaper. And it's a well-read newspaper, the Guardian. Everybody knows what the Guardian is. And Ray got scared. He felt that they were going to come for him. He felt that the people that were still looking to get at him were going to come for him, or that the government was going to have to take care of him because they needed to loose ends. They needed to deal with that. And he was afraid for me and my family, so he told me to stay away from him, okay? So I agreed to that, but at the same time, Ray was a creature of habit. I knew that on Mondays he went to the dry cleaners. On Tuesday, I don't think he did anything on Tuesday, but Wednesday he went to this restaurant up the street from him, and because they had a senior deal on Wednesday, so he went there. On Thursdays, he went to the barber shop to get his hair cut, which is the same barber that I use today. I introduced him to that barber, and from 2005 when I moved to Florida, soon after, I was using that barber, and until I went to him yesterday, okay? So Ray would be there every Thursday. I didn't have to be with Ray to know that he was okay. I was also the signer on his lease. So the people in the leasing office, which his apartment was diagonally across from the leasing office, every time they walked out the front door, they could see his green Jaguar. And I asked them to let me know if his car didn't move, to let me know. So let's move on. Let's go to the next one in 2018. That was the next time that Kelly was with him. That's when she started convincing him to let her come back and be in his life, okay? So Ray agreed, and if you look at the pictures, 2016, he was smiling, looked healthy. Even November of 2018, he looked happy, or he was smiling, his face didn't look crazy. By the time you get to November of 2019, where she posts, going to get daddy a house, I love me some him. This man is 86, almost 87 years old. Who is that house for? He's been living in apartments all of his life, comfortably, with the apartment complex taking care of the yard and the facilities and all of that. He's been living in an apartment. So now all of a sudden, at 86 years old, it's on his bucket list to go into $480,000 worth of debt. Okay? In addition to that, she fired his caretaker and took over. So she got on his payroll. Okay? She took him away from all of his caregivers. All right, so the house wasn't even ready until May, after they purchased it in November. And she still had to wait. So she moved him. She was so anxious to get him down to Charlotte, because that's where, Charleston, because that's where her and her boyfriend had a business that Ray had invested in. Again, another business. And to get him down there, she moved him into an apartment in January until the house was ready in May. He moved in the house in May, and in November, he was dead. So her question was, well, he should have had mortgage insurance. And my thing was, who gives an 87-year-old man a 30-year mortgage insurance on a 30-year loan? Really? So I'm not going to address that, but you can look at the pictures of his body and his face through the transition.
Mm-hmm. Now, that said, we dealt with the character issue. Mm-hmm. We're now going to go into the letter, okay? Mm-hmm. We're going to go into the letter surgically and show why it's a fraud, why it's a hoax. Okay? Exactly. You want to take this dive with me, sister?
Yep.
Let's do it.
Let's go.
Now, let me close this up here for a minute so people can see. Okay. Now, I copied this from the actual letter. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The claim is that Ray Wood's handlers,
Mm-hmm.
his supervisors,
Mm-hmm.
conceived the plot to entrap two of Malcolm's followers, his security detail, to entrap them in a plot to blow up the Statue of Liberty and thus remove them from the Audubon Ballroom on February 21st, 1965,
Right.
and make the door, the access to the facility, to make it lax, to ensure that there would be proper security.
Right.
The letter claims that Bowie and Sayed, these were the two men, Walter Bowie and Khalil Sayed, were under surveillance of handlers who created the plot, and concluded that both men were, listen to this, key to Malcolm's security. And I'll read it from the letter. The Statue of Liberty bombing idea was created by my supervisor / handler. Under surveillance, the agency learned that Bowie and Sayed were key players in Malcolm X's crowd control security detail. It was my assignment to draw the two men into a felonious federal crime so that they could be arrested by the FBI and kept away from managing Malcolm X's Audubon Ballroom door security on February 21st, 1965. On February 16th, 1965, the Statue of Liberty plot was carried out, and the men were arrested just days before the assassination of Malcolm. At that time, I was not aware that Malcolm X was the target. So, according to this letter, Ray Wood's handlers had surveillance on Walter Bowie and Khalil Sayed. They were being watched, and they conceived this plot to say, hey, look, they are so crucial to protecting entrance into Malcolm's events that if we can pull them away and ensnare them in this trap, it would give easy access to killers making their way into the facility, into the venue, and carry out the assassination. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
However, there's only one problem with that. And it's a huge problem that proves that this letter is a lie and a fraud. And that is that Walter Bowie wasn't even in Malcolm's organization at the time of the assassination of Malcolm X. He wasn't even in the organization, much less being surveilled by Ray Wood's handlers, much less handling the security of the door. I'm going to play a clip right now that was filmed by the New York filmmaker Omar Shabazz, who is done great work over the decades chronicling the history of Malcolm X in general and the assassination of Malcolm X in particular. And he has absolutely priceless footage that will blow this whole thing open. In 1997, he recorded Walter Bowie. He recorded him. And Walter Bowie says that he wasn't even in Malcolm's organization at the time of the assassination. In fact, he says he didn't even know that Malcolm was in trouble. I'm gonna let you listen to it. Brother Omar, shout out to Brother Omar Shabazz. We haven't always agreed on everything, but the brother has done great work over the years. And that's the problem when you tell a lie. You know, when you tell a lie, when you run a scam.
This part I have to keep from laughing because I mean it's serious. This is very serious because the slander and the defamation and all those things is very serious. But this part is crazy to me. He just gave Omar Shabazz all the credit. He said that he shout out to him. He maintains all the documents. He is a credit to this or that. And he also said, I guess at the end of the interview with Walter Bowe, but first of all, he can't even pronounce Walter Bowe's name. He's supposed to be a historian. He's calling him Walter Bowie and this, that, and the other. If he even listened to the video, he'd know that his name was Walter Bowe. But Omar Shabazz, and I give a shout out to Omar Shabazz too, because he wanted to set the record straight after the research that he did and talking to other historians and diving deep into the video library that he had back from the 70s, okay? And he came up with this video, and instead of him listening to the whole thing, he just put this up here in an attempt to discredit me and discredit the letter. But I shout out to Omar Shabazz as well, because he actually set the record straight. And in this July 2nd of 2022 video with Omar Shabazz, he's going to tell you exactly what he thinks of me and of what Rahman Muhammad and other historians have done.
I am certain that the entire world has heard about the ex-undercover officer, Raymond Wood, who released a deathbed confession letter to his cousin, Reggie Wood, who in turn presented and read aloud the letter to the public at a press conference at the Malcolm X and Dr. Betty Shabazz Educational and Memorial Center, formerly known as the Audubon Ballroom. The date was February 20, 2021. Before Mr. Reggie Wood could place the letter back into his envelope, haters started coming out of the woodwork to attack Mr. Reggie on a slew of charges. Shabazz Productions felt the need to interview Mr. Wood on camera so that the public could see for themselves. He's a no-nonsense, honest, and upright man. He has no need to lie about the confession letter at all. Use your own eyes and ears as lie detectors, and the conclusion will be that the man passes with flying colors.
Words of Walter Bowie.
I was the founding member of the Organization of Afro-American Unity. My wife, who was then Nanbo, and I were the first non-Muslim people to join Malcolm before he left the mosque. I later left Malcolm because I was very, very, very radical in those days, and I couldn't quite wait for Malcolm to catch up. My wife, however, stayed in the organization. I was given to more radical answers to our problems. Was I ever a member of Malcolm's security team? No, I was not. The people in the mosque had their own very, very well-trained FOI. Some of the people from the FOI left the mosque with him, including an extraordinarily fine karate person and an extraordinarily heavy brother named James Shabazz. They were people that that guarded Malcolm when he left. When his house got bombed, my good friend Khalil Sayed would stay overnight with arms to protect his house after the bombing. I was busy doing my own thing and my own organizing at that time.
I don't want to get in it because I don't want to look at the camera.
Oh yeah. Totally different.
Now, Yuri Kuchiyama said that that too, you along with Khalil and others were indicted and arrested for the Statue of Liberty, the possible Statue of Liberty, and that you were a top martial artist, that you were formerly somewhat a bodyguard of Malcolm, that it was part of a government conspiracy to remove you and others away from him that would open him up to assassination.
That is almost true. Khalil Sayed, the person who was arrested with me, did put himself in a position to guard Malcolm's house but that was after the bombing. He also took martial arts lessons, as I did, with James Shabazz, who was Malcolm's number 2, very, very capable number 2 person. But I was never per se a bodyguard of Malcolm. I was teaching at that time elsewhere, both jiu-jitsu and judo to children.
What about your attitude about self-defense back then concerning mom? In other words, rumors began to spread. He was being stalked coast to coast. Did you have any, though at that time you were no longer in the loop directly, did you have any concerns or maybe opinions about?
I was never close enough to the politics of the Nation of Islam to know that Malcolm had enemies. During the time I knew Malcolm, everybody I knew loved Malcolm intensely. I could not possibly imagine anybody in the world could not love Malcolm. And I had no idea why he had to leave the mosque. I had no idea that he had enemies. And I could not possibly conceive. Since I didn't know anybody that didn't love him, I had no idea that he had enemies. I certainly would have arranged my life differently and certainly would have affected me differently had I known. But unfortunately, I didn't. I'm not sure it made much difference, since the plot to kill him was immense. couldn't have, nor could the people around him, the few people that were around him, been able to stop the assassination. How do you stop the United States government? How do you stop the New York Police Department? And not that it would have made any difference. I certainly would have been there had he'd asked me. But that was not the case.
Okay, so folks, there you have it. There you have it. Walter Bowie wasn't even in Malcolm's organization. And this is, a known fact. But, with the passage of time, this is the reason why it is so important to document the history, because if you don't document the history, then folks can appear later and say whatever they want to say. Okay? Here you have in his own words, Walter Bowie saying that he wasn't part of Malcolm's security detail. He wasn't part of Malcolm's organization. In fact, he didn't even know that Malcolm's life was in danger. So how ridiculous, how bogus is this so-called confession, deathbed confession letter?
One carbines that was stashed at Khalil Sultan Syed's apartment was supposed to be used at the Audubon Ballroom for Malcolm's protection the day he was assassinated. But Khalil was arrested before Malcolm's murder, which of course raises the question, was it about arresting Khalil to confiscate the rifles that were used for Malcolm's protection? Or was it to get all birds with one stone? In an effort to discredit Brother Reggie Wood, one of his harshest critics pointed out that Raymond Wood mistakenly named Walter Bowe as one of Malcolm's top security men. And though Walter Bowe was not on Malcolm's security, it doesn't make Reggie Wood a liar. Apparently, Ray Wood had that part wrong in his confession letter. Ray's handlers didn't tell him everything. Reggie Wood is only going by what's written in his cousin's confession letter. You owe Brother Reggie an apology. Mr. Reggie Wood, unfortunately, you'll have to look for brotherliness in this non-existent Malcolm X Lovers Network elsewhere, because the club's real name is the Malcolm X so-called comrades who can't get along with each other social club. They all hate one another. That's why they are against you. And if you refuse to kiss their rings, they won't back you. I bet not one of them ever even came up to you and said thank you. You see, their 15 minutes is over, and they don't want to see anyone overshadow them.
Okay, wait. It gets better. Now, Omar Shabazz goes in on Rahman Mohammed about his analysis of the Walter Bowe situation in the confession letter. I mean, he goes in on it. And he also says that they owe me an apology. Rahman Mohammed, Carl Evans, all of these guys who came out against me with unproven facts, they were trying to protect their money. They were trying to protect their books. Carl Evans trying to protect his book. Zach Kondo trying to protect his book. Rahman Mohammed trying to protect his Netflix documentary. But see, the information that Ray put out, he didn't recreate the will. He was just a first-hand witness. He told me where to find this stuff. And Khalil Saeed, Max Stanford was one of Malcolm X's right-hand men right before he went to Mecca. And Max Stanford sent Khalil Saeed in to coordinate the security for Malcolm X. It's in his book that he wrote, which is documented at it's documented at Columbia University. It's on several other websites. Marxist, it's on Gale.com, it's on freedomarchives.org. And if he's a historian researching Malcolm X, he should know these things. He should have known where to find Max Stanford's article, okay? And if Ray was so illegitimate or whatever, then how would I know where to find it? I'm not a historian or a researcher, but it's right there in front of his face. And if you can't find him as Max Stanford, Mohammed Ahmad is who you can find him under. And the document says very clearly that Khalil Saeed was sent in to coordinate Malcolm's security. And Khalil Saeed was arrested in the Statue of Liberty bombing plot. Therefore, it left Malcolm vulnerable. And it also says that Malcolm X was assassinated on February 21st, all in the same paragraph. So he's connecting that directly in, and he was one of the right-hand men of Malcolm, and he ran the Revolutionary Action Movement. Or they call it RAM. And there's plenty of documents that he could have found very, very easily to verify Yuri Kochiyama's information, but he didn't. But he's the authority on the assassination of Malcolm X. This is completely laughable.
Okay, so folks, there you have it. There you have it. Walter Bowie wasn't even in Malcolm's organization. And this is, a known fact. But, with the passage of time, this is the reason why it is so important to document the history, because if you don't document the history, then folks can appear later and say whatever they want to say. Okay? Here you have in his own words, Walter Bowie saying that he wasn't part of Malcolm's security detail. He wasn't part of Malcolm's organization. In fact, he didn't even know that Malcolm's life was in danger. So how ridiculous, how bogus is this so-called confession, deathbed confession letter? Okay? So you also see in this video just how radical this guy is. I mean, this guy left Malcolm because he said Malcolm wasn't radical enough. And what he meant by that is Malcolm wasn't going to sign on to blowing up landmarks. Malcolm was not going to sign up to shooting police and, going to war with duly constituted power. He wasn't signing up for that. And Walter Bowe said, hey, I don't have any time for this. And he left. But he was certainly not key to Malcolm's security detail at the door, such that he had to be peeled off and involved in some plot. No, the plot to blow up the Statue of Liberty is one thing, and the assassination of Malcolm X is another thing. And they don't meet. There's no connection here. This letter is a hoax. Say it once and for all. Now let's move on. Kelly, this is the first time you've seen this video?
Yeah, it is. And but
what do you think?
It just validates the point of just, again, the letter referencing that somehow my father was told to arrest these men, get them out of the hands of the security detail so they could have a direct shot to Malcolm. And again, it's this is a prime example of where you're utilizing the stepping on the backs of my father to get him to create a dotted line, if you will, from one place to the other. So in other words, because my father had history of going undercover and going against his people, he would seem like the perfect person that would do something like this. So let's just go ahead and just put it two together. Yeah, of course, he was working for Bossy. Yeah, that's exactly what he did. He went undercover and he infiltrated Black activist groups and he snitched on his people. And so therefore, he's a perfect patsy for something like this. But the fact of the matter is that did not happen. And, you know, you've got these conspiracy theories in an effort to try to keep going the who killed Malcolm X, even though your documentary clearly answered that question. Here we are still bringing up a possibility that there was other entities involved. But nonetheless, if that is the truth, okay, and again, one does not have to do with the other. Raymond Wood working for the NYPD undercover, there is nothing that ties him directly to other than people speculating. And I'm going to say that again, people speculating, saying, oh, I saw Ray Wood there. Oh, Ray Wood was hired to do this.
Well, let me stop you right there, because in this interview, and it became very clear to me after watching this, okay, salute to brother Omar Shabazz. If you go to the credits at the end of episode 6 of Who Killed Malcolm X, we give Omar special recognition for his work in keeping the assassination alive in the imagination of the people all these years. This kind of footage, you know, it helps to answer exactly where Reggie Wood came up with this scheme.
Mhm.
This originated with a theory or a rumor
Can I just say
that
this?
that was speculated by Yuri Kochiyama.
Yeah, but here, this is what I'm trying to say is that before we say Reggie came up with this, I don't think that he came up with anything. I think what happened is that other individuals who've been researching this for years came up with this possibility, and all Reggie did was grab the coattails and just rode along with it. I'm not even going to give him the credit of coming up with this possibility, this theory, because there were so many researchers out there that I've talked to personally who have told me that the so-called facts in Reggie book are recycled incidents that are out there for public knowledge that anybody could read. So he did not get any new information in his book. All of this stuff that's in his book that's so-called claiming that there's these new revelations are just recycled information from historians who've been studying this for the past 50 some odd years.
Yeah, well, so what you're saying is he's not that smart to...
I'm not, you know what, I'm not going to give him the credit is what I'm going to do, is I'm not going to give him the credit, okay? He's smart enough to go and copy off of somebody else, so I will give him that, but I'm not going to give him the credit of basically saying these new theories, because they're not new. I mean,
well, they're not new, because this video goes back to 1997.
Exactly.
Hold, sister, hold. It appears that it originated with Yuri Kochiyama. Either she heard or believes that she saw Ray Wood leave the Autobahn February 21st, 1965. You know, as you know, the first reportings in the newspaper in that afternoon that said that 2 men were taken away. And then the next day, morning edition, it said only 1 was taken away. Mm-hmm. And so she speculated years ago that this was Ray Wood. Mm-hmm. But this was shot down by many historians. Exactly. Because Ray Wood would first of all...
Okay, that statement was very interesting. And I'm trying to think of the best way to address that. She said that I stole information from other researchers, and this is information that was reported on years ago, this, that, and the other. See, my purpose wasn't to recreate the wheel. My purpose wasn't to do the research that everyone else has already done. The only thing I was doing was bringing that missing piece to the puzzle and inserting it. That was the only thing that I was doing. And any information that's in my book, I reference the sources in the book for that information, because it doesn't make sense for if an anthropologist or someone is digging for bones, and one group finds the tail on one end, and then another group finds the head on another end, and then my group finds the legs in another place, okay, or the feet in another place that they need to walk, that they needed to use to walk. I'm not going to go and dig in the same hole that those other people dug in to find the same things that they've already found. I'm just going to put my piece into it, and everything comes together and the puzzle is complete. Because if you have a puzzle and there's a big piece missing, then it's not complete. The puzzle can't go on the wall, or it can't go into a frame, or whatever it is that you do with the giant puzzle when you're finished with it. Okay, in this particular case, there are lawsuits flying to right the wrongs. But in normal situations, that's not how it works. And Rahman should know that. He should have cut her off at that point, but he did not. He allowed her to say something that was completely ridiculous, because nobody said that I was a historian or a scholar. I never said that. I said I had a piece to the puzzle and I have the links that lead back to them. That's it. Nothing more. And they're speaking about Yuri Kochiyama. This is another file and video that he should have found. He's supposed to be this forensic, investigative historian that's the authority on Malcolm X. But Yuri Kochiyama is right there in his face. And Yuri Kochiyama was a member of Malcolm X's. She was one of his assistants. She worked directly under Malcolm, okay? And she basically said that she knew Ray because Ray was in CORE. Yuri Kochiyama, if you look at some of the older pictures of Yuri when she was young, she was kind of cute. And she was a Japanese American, and Ray liked all those different types of women. So he may have hit on her, dated her, had a short affair with her. You don't know what was going on. But in this video, she knows Ray. She identifies with Ray, and she knows who she is. And she also said that she knew that Ray had set up Robert Collier, Walter Bowe, and Khalil Saeed because they were karate men that protected Malcolm X. They were close to Malcolm and they protected Malcolm. I didn't say this. Ray didn't say this. Yuri Kochiyama said it, who was actually one of Malcolm's assistants.
When you think of the kind of things that happened even within a week before Malcolm was killed, of course, everybody remembers the week before he was killed, his house was burned down. All right, and that was on, I think, a Saturday night. A few days later, I think it was about what day was it, 14th? Tuesday, I think. 3 of his close brothers, who would have been security, were busted on the Statue of Liberty case. Bob Collier's, Walter Bowe, and Brother Khalil. I mean, it was a way, it seemed like whether it was the government or whoever wanted to get at Malcolm, they were step by step taking away the people who could have protected Malcolm. And so as those things were happening, and then of course on that February 21st, when you think that not one person who was invited to speak on the 21st showed up, you know, like Galamison and a whole bunch of the others, they didn't show. I mean, that said something. But that whole week before he was killed, people were talking. But wait, but the question...
Why would men like Walter Bowe, 3 men that were pretty well trained to secure Malcolm, allow themselves to get wrapped up? It wasn't something that they legitimately was involved in, or was it a frame-up? The three men that...
Oh, oh, I think the Statue of Liberty case was a frame-up. I mean, he had three really men who were passionately about the black liberation struggle, who loved and were so devoted to Malcolm. And I think, well, those who busted him, well, it's not just the police department. I mean, the FBI, CIA, I think they all were part of it. And the fact that they sent in an agent, you know, Raymond Woods, into that group, I mean, they were out to get those three guys.
Now, Raymond Wood was a part of the Statue of Liberty
Case.
Okay.
He was an infiltrator?
Infiltrator.
How was it known that he was exposed to be an infiltrator?
I think even before the trial, well, I'm sure that, you know, of course, Bob Collier, Walter Boy, and Khalil, I'm sure they were not sent to the same prison. You know, they never put you in the same prison. They don't want you to get together and all that. But they all knew it had to be Ray Woods. And I think they got the word out to the people on the street that, and then Ray Woods admitted it. And anyway, when the case came to trial, it all came out in the trial.
Now,
So he was in the OAU, Ray Woods?
no.
No, only in the Statue of
In the
Liberty.
Statue of Liberty. This is two. These men were involved in another group.
Yeah,
At the same time, they were with Malcolm.
yeah.
He coerced
And
those
he
three
coerced
brothers.
on them and busted them in that group. Now, these men were in prison at the time of Malcolm's assassination? Or did they...
Oh, yeah. They were taken in just before. Malcolm was assassinated on the 21st. They were apprehended on 14th. Oh, so it's just one week before then, huh?
Did you...
Why would he even be going back to the Autobahn?
Well, and see that
What?
the
I
letter.
mean, he the Autobahn.
Well, and see that
What?
the
I
letter.
mean, he was a star witness in the Statue of Liberty case. His name had been mentioned in the press. So he's going to go back to the Autobahn.
Well, let me just tell you this. So this is what I can confirm. Okay, and this came straight from my mother. Was that when the case broke, which was February 16th, 1965, my father was given strict instructions to not leave the house, to not go out to any public outings. They were reserving him for the trial. He was a key witness in the trial in putting these three individuals in jail under a terrorist act of the potential bombing of the Statue of Liberty, the Liberty Bell, and the Washington Monument. There is no way that the NYPD would ask their star witness to go to the Autobahn to do something as frivolous as what Reggie Wood is claiming, to check to see if they were scanning for guns. I mean, that is something that anybody with a set of eyes could actually do. And I told this to Reggie. I said to him, brother, there is no way that you're going to get that to fly with anybody. I don't know where you're getting this from, that was my father's responsibility, because that is just ludicrous. You know, again, my mother will stand up and say she knows for a fact that his handlers told him, stay put, stay out of Dodge. You were to go nowhere.
Okay. First, let's talk about the mother. She says her mother said that Ray was ordered to stay in, and he absolutely could not leave the house because there was this huge case that he had to testify on. We'll get to that, but let's talk about the mother first. I have a copy of Ray and Pauline's marriage announcement, and that was January of 1966. Okay, almost a year after the assassination of Malcolm X and the Statue of Liberty bombing case. But the significance of this marriage announcement and all that is the fact that in 1965 and 64, while Ray was undercover, it was a known fact that Ray was a playboy. He used women to get into the organizations. He had gotten so bad with it that he couldn't even show up at rallies because the women that were there, they called him, I think, Susan Brown Miller, who wrote an article about Ray back in 1965, around the time of the trial. It said that the article was entitled, "I Remember Ray Wood." And it said that Ray was such a playboy that all the girls wanted to, he had so many girls that he couldn't even go to the rallies anymore. So for her to say that her mother said something, Ray kept so many secrets from that woman, if they were even dating then. He kept so many secrets from her that it was ridiculous. I mean, he was undercover. And then also, in addition to that, it's also a fact that he wasn't living with her at the time. He was living in an apartment with the roommate when he was undercover. Okay? So how is it that she knew that he stayed in? How does she know what he was doing? And now let's talk about this big case. Okay? This big case that he couldn't risk himself for. First of all, it's a known fact, and it's been reported that multiple agencies had people in the Audubon at that time. CIA, FBI, all those. Why wouldn't Bossy have somebody in there to observe and report? He wasn't looking to check for guns. He was in there to observe and report. And I want to go back to Khalil Saeed. They said that he was checking for guns, he was this, that, and the other. And well, no, let's just leave that. I'll go there a little bit later. But let's get back into the importance of this big case that he had. Well, the charges that they filed against these guys were transporting dynamite and foreign goods into the country from another foreign country, okay, smuggling. And the maximum sentence for this was 2 years, okay? So they didn't care about that case. That was a means to an end. They cared about the assassination of Malcolm X. They were trying to assassinate Malcolm X, and that was the purpose for putting Ray in the Statue of Liberty case, and also sending him to the Audubon, because he said that he had been outed on the Statue of Liberty bombing case, and they told him that you all look alike, nobody's going to recognize you. So that part. Then, in addition to that, she admitted that I had a discussion with her about his confession back in November of 2020 when I went down to check on the property as the executive of the estate, because she says, quote, "Brother, there is no way that my dad was in the middle of that." So there's a good possibility that she did reach out to Ark Media well before the press conference, and she was their backup plan. So take a look at the wedding announcement, and if you notice, Ray's father's name was Adolphus. Okay, he even lied to her on the wedding announcement. He's got that his parents' name is Ronald. Who's Ronald? So her mother, and then I feel bad for her because Ray kept her in the dark. And I had a conversation with Ray about her mother, and I'm not going to go there because that's not what we're talking about right now. But really, Kelly, really?
Well, let me just say this. In my previous talk, I explained that security was lax at the door, but that was per Malcolm X's instruction. Right. That's the way he wanted it.
Right. And
we have it on the record, and it's a well-established historical fact documented many decades ago that in the winter of 1964 and 65, the 5 assassins were testing the door. They were appearing at Malcolm's events to see if they could get in.
Right.
And when it was so easy for them to just walk in the door,
right,
that's when Talmadge Hayes said that they actually believed that they could carry out this execution. So the point I'm getting at is the whole theory of the letter just falls to pieces.
Well,
because there was no need. There was no need to pull any security detail off the door because there was no real security at the door.
Well, he just said that Thomas Hare and his crew had been scoping out the Audubon and Malcolm's events since the winter, since December and into the winter, to find out if there was any security at the door and if they could get in to assassinate him. Well, the problem that I have with these historians is that they don't use their common sense. They don't use, they just stay within the boxes and the lines, and that's why they can't figure out anything, and they come up with these theories and they go by what's been well documented, this, that, and the other. Do you think that Max Stanford and Malcolm X, James Shabazz, those guys that were dealing with Malcolm's security didn't know that these guys were scoping out the place? That's why Max Stanford sent Khalil Saeed in early February to set up a security detail. Yes, Malcolm did say that earlier until they start realizing that people were starting to come in and try to check out how to get to him. That's why Khalil Saeed was important. That's why Walter Bowe, being Khalil Saeed's friend, would have eventually ended up coming to work for them. That is why they had to take him off them out of the picture, because the FBI and Bossy, they weren't surveilling Khalil Saeed and Walter Bowe. They were surveilling Malcolm X's conversations with Max Stanford and James Shabazz and all of those guys in order to determine that Khalil Saeed was setting up a security wing. That's the whole purpose of having him in. And if you read the history of RAM, if he took the time to do the research, he would see it, because in black and white, it's Columbia University, several universities have Max Stanford's papers on RAM as public information, okay? So yes, they had been scoping the place out. And yes, Malcolm's people weren't stupid, okay? They saw what was going on. They sensed that there was something going on. So they changed. People can change. This is everyday life. This, because you read something that said it was documented years ago, okay. But they also saw people trying to get in and get at him. So they brought Khalil Saeed in to help coordinate that. It's very simple.
The biggest thing that you need to notice is that in the letter itself, it says, I was told to go to the Audubon, but the letter falls shy of actually saying what he was there to do. Now, what confession letter do you know that you would write and you do not point out the reason why you were sent by your employer somewhere, if it was to so-called do harm? Again, the letter said I was sent to the Audubon, but it falls short of actually dictating what he was sent to the Audubon to do. What was his purpose for being there? And the reason being is because they wanted to create an implication. He was not sent there, but the letter, again, when it was created, its main purpose is to create an implication, just like Yuri Kochiyama.
Right, that perhaps he may have even been a gunman.
Exactly.
Exactly. But because when he says, Thomas Johnson, sister,
Right.
Let me finish my point here. When he says that Thomas Johnson was arrested to protect my cover, okay, and Thomas 15X Johnson was convicted for being the shotgun assassin,
right?
All right, which we know now is totally false, because
Right.
we're exposed who pulled the shotgun and who killed Malcolm X, William X. Bradley, Mustafa Shabazz. But you're right, the letter doesn't come out and say explicitly, but it suggests
Exactly
that he went back to do something nefarious, but it doesn't say what he did.
Exactly.
So the question becomes, how could this letter, almost 60 years later, exonerate anyone,
right,
when you don't say what it is you supposedly went back to do?
There's not a lot I need to say about that. Fast forward 8 months and the 2 men were exonerated. based on the information that Ray put out there, and it is what it is.
Exactly.
It's the most ridiculous. Like you said, how this thing got any traction whatsoever is a question, again, that we need to ask Attorney Crump. Now, I got a question here. Thomas, who is one of my followers, who's been really coming at me about this. I want you to know I've been reaching out to Benjamin Crump. I've been blowing up his phone. He won't take my call. Now, whenever he likes to send me something, he'll send me something or he'll call me. I haven't spoken to him recently, and I don't know him that well. But yes, I mean, we're not saying, we're not saying that we're trying to crucify anyone here, but this has to be cleaned up. This has to be cleaned up because now this has been dropped into, the historical record, and it's people like myself and just a small handful of others who are even capable of disentangling this lie, of decoupling this lie from the authentic history. That's what I take so much affront to. Malcolm's daughters, or maybe Malcolm's daughters, were talking to Reggie, and then they went and got Crump. We don't know the story. But whatever it is, we need Benjamin Crump to come forward and to apologize for this and to declare it a fraud and not leave it hanging out there for time immemorial for conspiracy theorists and these Nation of Islam people and these other maniacs. Let's move on, okay? Now, I want you to speak to this because when you saw the letter and how it was worded and how it was composed, it's very parochial and uneducated, amateurish style. That's the word I'm looking for. But also, whoever wrote the letter clearly had no understanding of how police personnel self-identify themselves. Okay? Ray Wood entered police service as a detective. He came out of the Air Force. He didn't enter the service as an officer, plain clothes or otherwise. And he would have not self-identified as such. Oh, pardon me. Let me backtrack. He entered police service as a detective and would have self-identified as such, not as an officer, as the letter claims.
Let's go over this part right here. So it says, I was a Black New York City undercover police officer from 1964 through May of 1971. That is actually false, okay? So go back to the letter for just a second. So here's the thing. In April of 1964, when my father joined the force, he did not go in as an undercover officer. He went in as a third grade detective. And we have his 10 card that shows that he went into the force as a detective. Okay. And that's important because when you're talking about detective status, you're talking about third grade, second grade, and first grade. Between the years of 64 and 71, my father moved from third grade to second grade in 1965, and then he moved to first grade detective by 1971. So never, and if you go back to the letter for just a second.
Okay, I just wanted to show you.
Oh, okay, the 10 card. Yeah, so the 10 card, if you'll see where it says 41764.
Right here. The left-hand column, 41764.
Detective division. So what that is saying is that from the very beginning, when my father entered the force, and this is his 10 card, this is from the NYPD, honey. Okay.
Wow, he sounds really angry. That's how you bust a blood vessel, high blood pressure, heart attack, something like that. He needs to take a deep breath and calm down, because when Ben Crump does reappear, he's not gonna like it. No one involved is gonna like it when Ben Crump does reappear. Now, he has been avoiding his phone calls because he doesn't waste his time with frivolous, just people who really don't make sense. Because Ben Crump did his due diligence and he did his research before he put himself out there. Ben Crump is not going to get behind something unless he has verified it, okay? So, when I first met Ben Crump, he asked me 1,000,001 questions. And him and his people made sure that the things that I was saying wasn't going to make him look bad. He's got too much at stake for something to make him look bad. So, you reaching out and blowing up his phone, it just proves that you did anything by any means necessary to try to discredit me. That's what that means. That means he did anything that he could to try to discredit me. Because someone that angry has something to hide. He's trying to protect his missteps and his lack of research and the shortcomings of this documentary. Because when I come forward with this video, people are going to know that this man is not who he says he is. First of all, he used all of the information from Manny Marlborough's book for this documentary. So they're saying that I stole information, this, that, and the other. This documentary is the exact same information that was in Manny Marlborough's book. And then they try to take credit for the exoneration. Now you're trying to say that the district attorney and the Innocence Project, Barry Shep, they're idiots because they based their whole determination on this documentary. And I'm assuming that's what they're saying. Okay, so if they based everything on this documentary, the book came out in 2011. Well, why didn't they just get the book and research the book and make their decision then? So them saying that Ray's confession had no bearing on the exoneration of these men is, as Kelly says, ludicrous. And again, they are reaching. If you notice the document of Ray's trial transcript from the Statue of Liberty bombing case, he states that when he came in, well, the district attorney also states that when he became an officer, when they hired him, they did not send him to the police academy. They did not give him any formal training, and he did not get a badge. He did not get a gun. He came in and went undercover as a undercover officer. But the thing was, Ray felt so bad about the things that he had done while he was undercover, infiltrating his own people, that he didn't consider himself a detective until he came out from undercover after the Black Panther Party, Panther 21 trial. Then in 1971, they actually gave him a sergeant position. They allowed him to investigate white people, as a matter of fact. He was part of the Mayflower Madam case. And that's when he felt like he was actually a detective. After 1971, because they just had him in as a patsy, as a pawn, doing this work, snitching on his people. And so from 1964 to 1971, that's how he felt. So he didn't feel like he was a detective. And that 10 card doesn't mean anything because they backdated the 10 card so that it would show his pay for his pension at the end. So what is she talking about? She's got a document that she took, and now she's trying to say that he was a detective the whole time. It says in the court trial that they didn't even give him, he didn't even start his formal training until after the Statue of Liberty bombing case. And if she had had a better relationship with Ray, he may have told her these things because that was a personal thing for him. He did not feel like a police officer. He didn't feel like a detective until after the Panther 21 trial in 1971. And she just admitted that in 71, he was made sergeant. And that's when he got a chance to be a lead investigator and all those things actually in another area outside of Harlem, and he could actually be a police officer. So though that is why he said police officer. Okay, they gave him that promotion as detective as an award for snitching on his people, and then knowing that he was involved in the assassination of Malcolm X. Why would you even consider that some type of good thing? Why would you feel like that is something to be proud of? He wasn't.
You see the letter, right?
Mhm.
Okay, there it is. Now let's go to the nail in the coffin. Okay, the nail in the coffin, because the question becomes, why did Ray Wood, why would Ray Wood, if he wants to bare his soul and he wants to come clean and he wants to meet his maker with a clean heart and he wants to exonerate Thomas Johnson, why does he, again, not make a video, first of all, but why does he mail a letter to his cousin, Reggie Wood's father? He addresses the envelope to the father and the letter to Reggie Wood. What sense does that make, right? So what happened? Did the father open the letter and say, "Oh, Reggie, this is for you"? This is nonsensical, right? You shared with me that just 3 weeks before and 3 weeks after. Well, I'll let you tell the story.
So what's important to know is that, again, looking at the date of the letter, my father was actually in the presence of Reggie Wood, okay, before the January 25th. He was actually with Reggie down in Florida because he was trying to get his arrangements to move and relocate down there. So 3 weeks prior to this letter being written, not even 3 weeks, at least a week prior to the letter being written, so-called written, Reggie and my father were in the same city. Not to mention the fact that 3 weeks later, he was going to be with my father again on March the 11th. So in other words, he was going to, so my father saw Reggie in person twice. He saw him at the beginning, mid-January, and then he saw him again mid-March on March the 11th. So the question goes back to, and if you go back to the letter for just a second, okay, the letter says that it was dated January the 25th. Again, he just left Reggie, right? The 18th, 19th, 20th, and 21st, all right? And then he comes home to Charlotte, and then he sits down and he pens a so-called letter, right? And as you can see from the postmark, it was postmarked February the 9th from Charlotte, and it was addressed to Ernie Wood. Now the letter, again, just as we said earlier, the letter was addressed to Reggie Wood. But here you've got this envelope, all right, that's coming from Charlotte to his cousin. But why would he then send the letter by mail when he, just left Reggie mid-January and was going to see him again in 3 weeks?
Why not just give him the letter?
Why not just, yes.
Why not just give him a letter? Why mail the letter to Reggie's father?
Right.
Right? Why not just give him a letter? What we're going to...
Okay, as I said about the video, when Ray confessed this stuff to me, he did not want me to be in a position where I could just go and turn it in and be out of the middle of it. And he'd be still living, and he'd have to go through all of the things that I'm going through right now. So therefore, he came down to visit. My father had already told him that I could be trusted. He came down to visit. We spent time together. He determined that I was the guy. He did a number of things. First of all, he added me to his power of attorney. If you look at the dates on the power of attorney, you'll see that he added me to the power of attorney when he went back. Okay, the same month in January, he did all of these things. He drafted this letter, even though he hadn't even told me the confession yet. He drafted the letter and he mailed it to my father. And it's not addressed to me. It says, to whom it may concern. And at the bottom of the letter, it says that I have left my full confession with my cousin, Reginald Wood Jr. It does not say, the letter is not addressed to me. And he mailed it because, first of all, 80-year-olds mail things. I said that before. And second of all, he sent the letter to my father to be placed in his will. I had no idea the letter was even in existence. And when I asked him how I was gonna prove everything, he said that when the time comes, I will have everything that I need. So them saying, why would he mail a letter? Why would he this? Why would he that? You know, that was his process. That was his process. And it makes a lot of sense to me, but apparently it doesn't make sense to them. And in addition to that, she said that when he relocated to Florida, he didn't relocate. He was running from her.
Answer that question right now. We've baited them long enough.
Yeah.
Folks, look at the envelope. Look at this. Look at the W in Wood. Okay, you see that? See the W? Now, this letter was addressed in 2011, right? So let's say 9, almost 10 years before the letter was revealed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Supposedly. Now, look at the W, okay? Take a look at the W. You see how the angles, first of all, are very sharp, right? Whoop, 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 right? And you see how in the back, there's like this little tail here off the W. See that? And you see how on the right side, it kind of goes off like a rocket, like into the sky. You see that? Okay. Now, we have, this was 2011. Ray Wood wrote this envelope out. And that is his accurate or authentic signature, or writing, I should say. All right, that is his authentic handwriting. Now, 9, 10 years later, his hand is a little shakier, right? He's an older man. Okay, so it's not as elegant. But again, you see the little tail here, right? On the W. Okay, the hand's a little shaky because he's an older man now, right? And you also see that same line that kind of goes off into the sky, right? Like a rocket, you know what I mean? Like a rocket taking off from a space pad right out there, right? You see that? Okay. Now, let's take a look at the W on the letter that was inside the envelope, okay?
That actually, yeah, that was supposedly inside the envelope. Because
supposedly inside the envelope. Yeah, right. We don't even know what was in the envelope.
Right.
Look at the W. You want to take another look? Look at that. Not even close.
And here, note this, top was 2011, the bottom was 2020. Somehow that W remained consistent in all of those years, but somehow on this letter, we don't have that same type of distinction. Why is that?
Well, because it's because clearly two different hands wrote it, and this is what was concluded by the handwriting experts who looked at this. We know that at least one major journalistic outfit hired a handwriting specialist, handwriting expert to look at it. But you don't have to be an expert. You look right at it. Mm-hmm. Here, the line goes off very sharply to the right. Here, it's elliptical.
It looks like 2 U's, and here's it's 2 V's, and that is 2 U's. But so let me just clarify, because again, when I spoke earlier about the fact that my father and I were estranged for a bit of time, it was in that time that my father entrusted both Reggie and his father. Okay, so there was a period of time when my father named Ernie Wood, which is who this envelope is addressed to, as his personal executive for his will. And that was done in either 2009 or 2011. All right. So there would have been correspondence over a period of 2 years that my father would have kept in touch with Ernie and would have mailed him documents.
Okay, let's address the signature thing. They have the envelope that Ray sent the letter in, and they're referring to the W. Well, did they bother to look at the D? And one is a signature and one is an envelope that he wrote out. So there are different ways that you script things. Also, if you look at the other one, the 3 of 2020 signature they have, that's the only next signature that they have. And you know, the peculiar thing about that signature is, if you look at it, it says Raymond A. Wood, lender, okay, and CEO of Ravenwood. That is a loan that Ray made to Kelly at age 87 years old, okay? So who is taking advantage of a senior citizen? Because Angie wasn't even smart enough to not use that or cut that part out. So, I mean, really now? And Netflix and Ark Media tied themselves in with these guys? And then the signatures. I have 17 signatures. I have leases. There are notarized signatures. There are signatures that span through the dates from 2008 all the way through to 2015 when he signed the lease, before Ray decided that it was too dangerous for me to be dealing with them because of the Garrett Filbert thing. But if you look, I put it up there so you can pause it and you can look and see it for yourself. Don't let me be the judge. Don't let the autograph specialist be the judge. Don't let the DA's office be the judge. You look at it in your plain eyes and look at those 17 signatures and tell me or anyone that that's not his signature. That W changes in so many different ways. He signed 20 different ways. So I don't understand. I really don't. But they grabbed the worst signature to compare it to, a 2020 signature. And she was so busy worrying about trying to find a signature that they could discredit this information with. She didn't think to show where he made her a loan that should be investigated.
Because of the fact that he was named as the executor of his will. So what we know is that this envelope, which clearly based on his W from 2020 to 2011 is consistent. So what they did was they found an envelope that my father had addressed to Ernie and said, oh, well, let's go ahead and pen a letter to correspond with the postmark on this envelope, so that it looked as if this fraudulent letter was actually mailed by my father. But again, without you knowing that he just left Reggie at the end of January, without you knowing that Reggie was the one who came and picked him up in March of 2011, and there would have been no need to mail anything to him, without you knowing that, and you just looking at a letter and then this envelope, you're going to put 2 and 2 together. But there is the manipulation. That is the prime manipulation, where he just went in front of the public and just put this fraudulent stuff out there, and nobody even questioned it. They were like, oh, okay, well, I guess, yeah, there's an envelope. Oh yeah, there's
because he knew that is what the narrative has been over the course of the last year. You know, defund the police, abolish the police,
right?
All this anti-police rhetoric. Okay, all of this, like you say, the docuseries on the Panthers.
Right.
You know, there's just, nobody really wants to look at it. You see, and so this is why the scholars have to come in. okay? And they have to do the work and put politics to the side.
I don't really have a lot to say about that part of it, because he was just um, ranting and complaining about, it being out there and him not being able to do anything about it, and the press and those guys are ignoring him for a good reason. But he's going into all of that, so I don't really have a lot to say about that. But I do have something about Kelly saying that I threatened her. Me questioning the fact that Ray passed away within a year after being with him, and I was telling her to stay out of it because this is what Ray wanted me to do. That's not a threat. I'm just telling her that Ray wanted me to do this. It's not a threat, and I posted that. It's a text message between her and I on the 26th when she came out with this press conference and these things that she's doing. But it should only feel like a threat if you're doing something wrong, because that statement that I made is a very general statement, and it's a question that anyone would ask.
Let the chips fall where they may. Now, the question that I'm getting is Mrs. Wood, or the former Mrs. Wood, your mom, is she still with us? And did she have any thoughts about this? Did she have anything to say about this?
Well, she told me that the first thing that she said when she looked at that letter and she saw Daddy's signature at the bottom, she said, "That's not his signature." That's the first thing she said to me. Then when she went back and read the letter, she said, "That's not how he writes. That's not, and again, one of your viewers made a very significant point, was that he put to whom it may concern, I being of sound mind and body. That is that same terminology that they copied from documents that my father had sent to him when he made them executor of his will, which he rescinded. He took it out. Once he found out who these people really were and what they were capable of doing, my father redid everything and just made sure that it was ironclad, that they had nothing to do with it. And, based on the texts that I received from Reggie Wood, okay, threatening me, to stay out of this, baby, I'm in this. I ain't going nowhere.
Well, sister, it's been a pleasure to be with you this evening. I'm sure my audience benefited from an inside look at this scandal, at this hoax. Again, we are not trying to attack our brother Benjamin Crump, but clearly a huge mistake was made. This was a rush to judgment. It wasn't vetted, okay? And the fallout has been quite unfortunate. It's been quite unfortunate.
For sure.
It's been quite unfortunate. We'd like to hear from Attorney Crump, how this happened. We just like to know, brother, how this happened. Disavow it. Disabuse us of it, and help us protect the integrity of the history. We've put in a lot of work to try to get the facts that we already have, and we don't want to muddy the waters or create confusion. When I started seeing news outlets, again, conjoining who killed Malcolm X with this, that's when I said, ho, no, because it's obvious that the media is not going to come in, you know what I mean, and report on what they know to be the facts, what we've shown tonight, and just to recap, Ray Wood would never have referred to himself as an officer. He never was an officer. Definitely he wasn't an officer in 1971. What was his rank then? He had moved up in rank. He was
The reason why he would have never described himself as an officer, because from the very beginning, when he started with the force, he came in as a detective.
Came in as a detective. Okay, great. We showed you that Walter Bowie wasn't even a member of Malcolm's organization in February 21st, 1965, much less on his security detail, much less somebody who was being surveilled by Ray Wood's handlers, right? We heard in his own words, he didn't even know that Malcolm's life was in danger, right? So that blows the whole thing out of the water.
But I would like to say this, is that somebody asked me from the media, why do I feel as though Reggie did this? And at the time, I didn't have an answer, but I do now. Reggie's whole point in doing this facade was to sell a book about my father that is full of mistruths and lies. And, you know, we will handle that portion of it as the family of Ray Wood. But that was what his mission was, is to be some type of author. And unfortunately, you know, he can't even give himself credit for discovering any new information. What he did, according to the researchers that I spoke with, who reached out and found me, verified that the information that's in this book is the work of other individuals. He did not uncover any so-called new evidence that needed to be.
But let me ask you this. So do you think he's working with someone else? Is that what you're claiming? Is that what you're suggesting, that he's working with someone else?
No, what I'm saying,
that he's just scavenging through books and hobbling together this conspiracy theory. What do you think?
I believe.
What are you saying?
What I'm saying is that he fraudulently used this information that was already out there as new discoveries of what he has found. So in other words, he took information, stole information is what I'm going to say, from other historians, other researchers who have done their due diligence, who did the work. He copied their information, put it in his book, and because of his relationship to my father, then stood up and said, oh, this is what Ray Wood told me.
Well, you know what? But before we close out, I believe I actually have footage of him saying exactly that. Let me see if I can find that.
I'm sure you do.
Let me see if I can find that, because he's out here dropping names now. And one of the historians whose names he dropped, I spoke to today.
Right. And I spoke to several historians myself, and they have all said to me, I did not authorize his book, or I did not give them a referral for the book. He has no backing whatsoever from the community that's been researching this.
Okay, let's listen to him now.
My next question is to you, Brother Wood. What was your view about Malcolm X's death prior to this revelation, and how has this revelation impacted your view about his death and all of the circumstances revolving around it?
Well, I was born in '69, so I didn't know a lot about what happened with Malcolm X at the time. I'd seen the movie, as everyone else has, and I've read about him in the history books. However, I didn't understand the caliber of what he was telling me until I started doing my own research and putting the pieces together, that he had actually, the things that he was saying actually matched the history books and matched what Garrett Felber was saying, what E.J. Rochelle was saying, what Josh Davis, another historian from the University of Baltimore, and I reached out to those guys to try to corroborate everything. I also hired Lisette Salato, who was a criminal justice major. She has a degree in criminal justice, and she's a graduate student, to do the research for me. And we started matching the pieces on a whiteboard, and it really came to light when all those things happened. But the expressions that Ray had when he was telling me this information, he was very serious and very sincere. You could see it in his face that he was very distraught about it, and he wanted me to make sure that I listened to every word he was telling me.
and he never recorded it. He never pulled out an iPhone. You know, I just saw where they pulled out an iPhone and recorded a fight in Bed Bath & Beyond. And you mean to tell me this man, as smart as he so-called is, never thought to say, hey, Ray, let me go ahead and get this on audio, because people really want to see these so-called expressions that you have going on. You understand what I'm saying? So
well, let me tell you something. One of the historians that he mentioned there, the historian from the University of Baltimore, Josh Davis, he reached out to me today. He was blowing my phone up, and he was telling me that he got a creepy feeling from Reggie. Reggie was pressing him to get a blurb or an endorsement for his book, and that it really creeped him out, and that he believes that Reggie got the story of Yuri Kochiyama from the Garrett Felber article, okay, and he hobbled it together. That's what he said. And he said, I am convinced that the whole thing is a fraud.
Okay, she mentions her mother again. I don't know why she keeps bringing her mother into this. But Kelly's mother and Ray, they got divorced when Kelly was like 11, 12 years old. So they hadn't even been together. So she's saying that that's not Ray's signature and this, that, and the other. From when Ray, I mean, he was like 35 years old when they got separated. He was 87 or 80 years old. I mean, come on. Really? That's like comparing that signature from 2020 to his signatures from 2011, before he started having problems with his hands and his arthritis started really like tightening up and all those things. I mean, come on, come on, man. Anyways, let's move past that. We're going to talk about the historians that I supposedly stole stuff from, and Garrett Felber blew up his phone. Not Garrett Felber, I'm sorry. Josh Davis blew up his phone to try to tell him that he felt creepy about me wanting to get a comment on my book. Well, if you look at the emails that I provided, make sure you pause them so that you can read them and look at them and examine them. Okay? Because Josh Davis sent me an email that said he could still write something on my book. And I said, it's already at print at Amazon. And he then sent another email that says, I finished the book and it was great to read the story about Ray and this, that, and the other. You did a good job. So if that sounds like somebody that said I was being creepy, I think our guy, Abdur Rahman, is exaggerating a bit. I don't know what it is. He probably reached out to them to try to get them to jump on this bandwagon, and they told him no. Okay? Garrett Felber also, I reached out to Garrett Felber at the beginning, back in like September or October, to talk to him, and then I asked him about what he thought about Ray being at the Audubon, and he said that it would be something that would make him want to reopen the case. So what they're talking about, I do not know. I did my research, and I gave the people who I used the information in my book, I gave them credit. I referenced those things in my book, and that's what you're supposed to do. Now, he's supposed to be the scholar. He should know that. He should have cut Kelly off and said, wait a minute, when you're writing a book, you use research information from other sources to bring it together to actually make your point. So I have no idea why they would even come out and say these types of things, because it does not make them look good. It does not make Ark Media look good. It does not make Netflix look good. And it doesn't make the documentary look very good, because you guys are putting all of your weight into the things that this man is saying. And he's supposed to be the authority on Malcolm X. He's supposed to have done all this forensic research. He's supposed to have done all of these things, but he missed obvious things like Yuri Kochiyama, like Khalil Saeed, Walter Bowe, all of these things. And he tried to make those his nail in the coffin things. What nail in the coffin? So you're telling us that the research that you did about the assassination of Malcolm X that you put into that documentary is your nail in the coffin research? If it's anything like this nail in the coffin research that you just did, that you had on this video that you did, I feel really bad for the American people, because they're still getting the wool pulled over their eyes, and there's a possibility that they're working with the government to try to prevent people from knowing the truth. I don't know. It just seems like it to me.
Okay.
They don't want to eat crow, but a lot of people want the story to be true.
They sure do.
It's too good not to be true. You know what I mean?
Right.
Never let a good story go to waste.
If they don't correct them, they're just as guilty as using my father to try to get to a bigger entity, you know, and it should not be done that way. You know, let his family grieve. My God, can I just grieve for my father and let the man rest in peace?
Right. Reggie Wood is a despicable individual. Okay. He's the worst. He's the absolute worst. Okay. To associate his own kinfolk with one of the most monstrous crimes against the African American community, the assassination of Malcolm X, to implicate his own cousin, his own family, and to try to write him into, you know, that abominable history. Okay, that is the most despicable thing I think I've ever seen, you know, a human being do to their own kinfolk. It's absolutely unbelievable. It's staggering, you know, and it's so unfair to Malcolm's children and his family. It's unfair to the Black community.
Yes.
And it is an affront. It is an affront to our history. And
Yes.
I, for one, am not going to let it stand.
Nope.
So with that, brothers and sisters, we're going to bring it to an end. Kelly, thank you so much for being me.
So much. I appreciate you.
Folks, this man has a cult following. Netflix, Who Killed Malcolm X documentary has something like over 100 million views, especially with the exoneration and him being hugged up with Aziz, with Norman Butler during the exoneration, and them jumping around saying that they were the reason why they were exonerated. And the American people, they love a good story. And just like he said, and he has a following that's almost like a cult following, that Malcolm X lovers following. And Netflix is an international company, and he's known worldwide. And this man said that you know, I was basically I was harming Malcolm's family, I was harming history, and I was harming Black people. And he was not going to stand for it. So what that means, translation is, something needs to be done about me. And people have been doing that and attempting to do that. And I have feared for my life. I have feared for my family's life. I have stopped doing the things that I normally do on a regular basis for fear of someone trying to take action on behalf of Abdur Rahman Muhammad and Ark Media, Netflix, Kelly Adams Wood. So I'm signing off, and thank you for listening to Facts Over Feelings. If you'd like to follow me, log on to my website at theraywoodstory.com. Follow us on social media, on Instagram, and also Twitter. And have a good day. It's a lot to unpack, and it's a lot to think about. And I think that you guys will really understand what's really been going on, because it's a shame that in order to cover up your own shortfalls, you try to risk the life of someone else that's just doing what he was asked to do. And that's the bad part about this whole thing, is because I'm only doing what my cousin asked me to do. And I was already afraid for my life for 9 years. And I thought that after the press conference that would change. You know, that I wouldn't have to look over my shoulder anymore. But Abdur Rahman Muhammad, Kelly Wood, Ark Media, Netflix, now I won't have to look over my shoulder, and I have to look over my children's shoulders. And people are judging me, and they are looking at me like I'm this horrible monster. And you can see the evidence for yourself. Every single line that they had, I was able to answer them. And I answered them without question. Have a good day, folks. I'm Reggie Wood, and I'm signing off.